Hello there everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you all very much for joining me today, and with today's video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia we have another episode of Should You Pull. This time being a banner that for the first time will feature a character's burst weapon but not their LD weapon. So if you're looking for Squalls' LD weapon you're going to want to go and have a look at my last Should You Pull video, which will feature the banners that he's featured on. But his burst is still sticking around for a couple of banners to go, and this one is also going to feature Garland and the return of his lost chapter and his LD weapon. So if you guys want to find out more about the event itself and what Garland's LD can possibly offer your team, then stick around and keep on watching. As always guys, don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below. So that's Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. On Twitch this weekend I'll be streaming Final Fantasy 9 on Saturday evening and Final Fantasy 14 on Sunday morning, before on Monday when I actually get a chance to stream Garland's Lost Chapter itself, possibly try a few tickets, see if I can nab Garland along the way, because I actually quite enjoy the character, and hopefully you guys will be able to come and stick around and take a look at what I have to offer on Twitch. With Patreon I also shout out one of my patrons at random every time I make a video, and this time around it's going to be Nimbus3. So thank you very much for your support for the channel. I want to show my support for, or my thanks to every single person that supports the channel as much as they do. So if you guys would like to get a title card made for you, just like Nimbus below here, then definitely go and check out my Patreon page. Don't forget to check out all of the websites that are associated with Opera Omnia, so that's OO, Tracker, Dissidia, DB, Dissidia Info and Tonbury Troop, and of course don't forget to have a look on YouTube for all the other content creators out there besides myself. So first things first, let's have a quick look at the event itself. So this event will bring back some nasty memories for a lot of people who've been playing the game for a long time, because the first time that Garland's event came around and the Colorless Queen boss came about, it was quite difficult for a lot of us because none of us really had that many EXs, or EX pluses at least, that we could use frequently, because when Chaos became a thing and you had to deal with the fact that enemies could increase their stats and decrease the amount of damage they took and things like that, you obviously had to have attack stats that compensated for it. And back then we didn't have characters like we do now that can churn out tons of damage while doing batteries and all that stuff. People were stuck using Lena with her base EX and stuff like that, making sure that you had enough damage and hitting ones just so you could get the initial Brave down, making sure Charlotta was there. But now we have so many more tools at our disposal. This boss and this event shouldn't be nearly as much of a challenge as it was the first time around. This time around with the Chaos event, you're going to have 2 waves instead of the 5 that we had originally, and the first wave is 2 Phantom Males. Now those of you who remember Phantom Males from either D9 or Noctis's events or various other places they've come about, they like to hide their turn count, and this is where Garland and Sephiroth, being the synergy characters, come in, both of which having abilities that lower enemy speed. So with Garland also having access to delay, having access to somebody that can either take advantage of speed downs or have delay in their kit will be very useful to you here. And the first candidate that I can think of that shines here is going to be Quistis, because she does the turn rate down, she does the speed down, she does delay, she does batteries. So if you have Garland, she helps him out. She's like the perfect character to take along for the Chaos here. Similarly, you could use other characters that have that kind of thing in their kit as well. So Kais will be really useful by having turns between turns from his launches, having framed speed downs, things like that. Similarly, you can also just boost your own speed, like by taking somebody like Saz, or somebody who's naturally really fast like Lightning, who is just going to do loads of damage, have the rebreaks, have the delays, all stuff like that. Bear in mind that Colorless Queen is a singular boss target, so you can sort of run them down with characters like Lightning. Now, the Colorless Queen itself likes to put up a field that stops you from summoning, because it's an offshoot from the Ultima High Seraph boss that we've seen plenty of times before that does exactly that. So you will have periods of time within the fight where you can summon, so it's not necessarily a case of you have to summon going into the fight. There are times where you're going to be able to do that, but you're not going to be able to do it as and when you want quite as frequently. But when the field comes about when you can't use summons, she also inflicts some really nasty debuffs on you. Things like paralysis, defense down, poison, attack down and paralysis obviously being the worst ones you could really see. And it's going to make things a little bit slower for you. But like I said, because of the amount of tools that we have at our disposal now that we didn't have the first time around, and the difficulty technically being the same because it's still Chaos difficulty, it's not going to be nearly as bad. You're also going to have access to characters like Aphmau, who have debuff evasion on them, as opposed to poor old Lena back in the day hitting for ones. Aphmau certainly does not do that now, so you could always bring somebody like her or Charlotta, who's got like HP damage increase. She's still pulling her weight ever since that first time that she came about for this Chaos. And then replacing Warrior of Light, you could just take another tank. So Snow, Zac, Galoof. Honestly, there's actually loads of characters you could use for this. Like, I've only listed 8 pictures here, but you could take Garnet, you could take Eldnash, you could take Alphino, you could take Arciella, you could take Kefka. There's so many characters that you could take for this now that we've had within the last 2 to 3 months, that even if you don't have any of the synergy characters, you didn't pull for Squall, you're not pulling for Garland, you don't have Warrior of Light or Sephiroth. A lot of these obviously being earlier characters from the Chaos era means that they're quite easily replaceable if you don't want to pull for their new toys. When it comes to friend, I would usually take either Charlotta or Quistis with me for something like this. Quistis, again, because she has those speed downs, turn rate downs, and the battery, and the delay, she's going to make life a lot easier for you. But if you want to, during a summon phase, Charlotta is going to be an amazing choice for you in order to just go through as much of it as you can. And then Brothers, I would say, would probably be the most preferable choice of summon, just because that max Brave Up is going to help you a great deal. When it comes to the Chaos Challenge, you obviously only have access to the 4 characters. So you have Squall, Warrior of Light, Garland, and Sephiroth. Now, Warrior of Light is going to be extremely impactful here if you want to try and keep your defenses up, because he's your only real method of healing. Now, when it comes to Chaos Challenges, you can use Alexander to help you heal, but if you've got a healer in your party, it's going to be a huge benefit to you. If you don't necessarily want to pull for Squalls Burst, but you happen to have access to Garland's LD, you could take Garland and Sephiroth, because their speed down auras will stack and it will make things a little bit easier for you. And obviously with Garland having quite as much delay in his kit as he does, that will make it so that their turn order will be much more in your favour. I have seen clears where people have used Squall, Warrior of Light and Sephiroth and therefore not needed to go for Garland at all. So if you don't want to go for Garland and you've managed to pick up Squall from the last stuff, then I wouldn't panic too much about that either. So now we go on to the actual banner itself, and seeing as there's only one character that actually gets anything new from this, which is Garland, because we've obviously seen Squalls Burst before, Warrior of Light and Sephiroth have their featured EXs, but the only character that actually gets anything new is Garland. So if you've used Garland before, and back when Garland first came out, he is a character that I went all in on pulling. Don't ask me why, I just did. And I did get his kit after pitying it. And honestly, I really enjoy Garland as a character. He is a hard-hitting melee attacker with sort of a lot of interspersed bits of delay in his kit. Now, back when his EX was the only thing available, you had to be quite sparing with the amount of delay that he had, because you would gain the Soul of Conflict buff onto himself, which gives him the delay on everything he does, but you'd only get it if you actively broke a target using one of his skills. Whereas now, with his EX or his LD, you have access to it a little bit more frequently, and you're also getting large amounts of melee damage. Pitying Garland back in the day is definitely a questionable choice, but I certainly wouldn't go about pitying him now either. But if you do happen to have him, he does have a lot going for him. So Round Edge and Soul of Chaos are both. Round Edge is an AoE Brave HP attack, and then single target HP, and then Soul of Chaos is a large hit count Brave HP attack as well. So they're very simple. They also raise his Soul of Chaos buff, which raises his offensive stats up to a maximum of 5, which then give him plus versions of his skills, so it makes it so that they hit that much harder, and also grant the Soul of Conflict delay buff as long as he breaks a target with those skills. Now, Balmung is his EX weapon and grants him Disaster of Chaos, which is actually a really fun and one of my favourite animations for EXs, because he cycles through each element in his kit and he does like 1 hit Brave HP, 2 hit Brave HP, 3 hit Brave HP, 4 hit Brave HP, and it actually just looks really cool. But then he also gives himself the Soul of Conflict buff for 2 turns once you use it, so it's like a guaranteed way of getting it. And then you'd also, once you'd realised it and given him his ingots and everything, he'd also raise his bravery before actually doing the damage, because he'd refresh the amount of bravery refund he'd get after each of those HP attacks, so that the final amount of HP damage you deal is that much stronger. He also starts with Soul of Chaos, so the only thing you actually have to do in order to get to max stacks is to use Round Edge once, because that grants 3 stacks of Soul of Chaos, as long as you have his weapon maxed, his 15 and 35 maxed out, and then he's good to go. Now the problem with Garland, certainly at this point in time, or before this point in time, is that his HP attack is a one-hit Brave HP attack, which by these standards is absolutely awful. And because of that, he'd run through his skills like nothing, and he didn't have enough of them to warrant doing that, so he'd run out of steam extremely quickly. His LD actually fixes that quite a lot. Now, Bind of Chaos is a 8-hit AoE Brave attack, single target HP attack that does 50% splash damage, which is actually a pretty hard hitting move, and it's got a lot of Brave overflow. It will almost certainly hit for max damage. It also grants him a new special effect, so that's the icon that sits above buffs. I've actually previously referred to these as buffs incorrectly, where they should be called special effects because they don't take up a slot in your buff line, and the same applies to ones applied to the enemy as well. These are called special effects. So this one is very similar to Sephiroth's speed down aura. So Chain of Time reduces enemies' defenses and speed depending on how many stacks you have. And then with Power Stones and everything, each time you use Binds of Chaos, it will give you a Chain of Time stack for 8 turns. So unlike Squalls sort of buffs he gets from his LD, these will run out if you let them. So try to keep on top of that and make sure that they don't run out so that you're able to do so. It also grants him Soul of Conflict for 2 turns. It also grants him 3 stacks of Soul of Chaos. So like the Round Edge before, now it's the first thing you do, bang, there's his Soul of Chaos stacks. And he starts with Soul of Conflict. So while he has Soul of Conflict, literally every attack he does delays the enemy by a turn. So it actually racks up quite a lot. And it also gives him a free skill use on the next turn. This in combination with his EX, it doesn't actually sound like much, but because his EX gives him Soul of Conflict, his LD gives him Soul of Conflict, and breaking an enemy gives him a turn of Soul of Conflict, he's actually going to have a turn of delay on pretty much every attack that he does. And it also, if you have the stacks of Soul of Chaos already, it gets more damage, more Brave Overflow, and at this point it's almost certainly going to cap out on damage. The other things that you get from LB break or limit breaking it, you get a 4th use of it. Now 4 uses of an LD is actually relatively unusual, and it definitely works to Garland's favour because it means that he's going to have more turns of Chain of Time, more turns of Soul of Conflict, and more skill uses. That's 4 extra skill uses on top of the Binds of Chaos themselves because it doesn't consume your ability used on the next turn. It also extends the range of the Chain of Time so that it's 8 turns, not 4, like I said earlier. It also gives him a Brave and HP attack plus that don't suck, which is great. His HP attack plus is a 3-hit Brave HP attack with 150 max Brave overflow. That's actually pretty good. Like, it's definitely in line with the kind of thing that we would expect now. The thing with Garland, now I do quite like Garland. I think that having a turn of delay on everything he does and having really cool animations on a lot of his stuff is really nice. But I like Garland. I'm a fan of Garland. So therefore, the fact that I would go in for him is left with a sense of bias. And even at this point, even though I am a fan of Garland, I'm kind of looking at it and thinking, not sure if I would pull for him now. The main reason for that is because he doesn't have a burst yet. He hasn't been given one in JP, and we certainly don't have one now. Now this presents a dichotomy of what people want to do. You can either pull for his LD now, and then that means you haven't got to worry about it later, because when his burst does come about, then it means that one of the banners will have his LD on it, and you don't need to care about it. Or you could just kind of leave it, save your resources for future characters that are coming out, like your Noctis, or your Omnitelian, or your Alize, or anyone that's coming up in the future, and therefore you can kind of wait to pull his stuff later. I mean, I'm not sure I would pull very heavily for Garland, because I think while his kit is nice, his LD brings him up to the level that we would expect recent EX characters to be. He doesn't go so far beyond that he has to be pulled. He's good, he is good, he's definitely a lot better than he was when he just had his EX, but I'm not sure that he's a character that I would go all in on unless I still needed to get Squalls Burst, because the position that I'm currently in right now, I actually have Squalls LD, and I don't have his Burst, but honestly, I'd rather wait for Omnitelian's banner, because that banner I think is going to be more lucrative for my current state within the game than Garland would be. So now for the big question of the video, should you pull for Garland's LD? Now, Obviously, like every video nowadays, when it comes to LDs, bursts, all that stuff, it's getting harder and harder to say yes or no, because there is no correct answer for that. So basically, the way that I sort of format these videos now is a case of I would pull in this situation or I would not pull in these other ones. So I would pull for Garland if I already had Squall LD, but I didn't have the burst and I wasn't really looking for a mid-Italian, or I had already pulled them. If I already had them, then Garland's a nice way to kind of round off trying to get Squalls Burst, because Garland LD is certainly not bad. It's actually really good, but it's just not a priority compared to certain other things while we're trying to recuperate our resources from the last couple of months. Saying that, if you wanted somebody that was a good melee damage dealer, or melee, however you want to pronounce it, that had consistent delay mechanics, like he doesn't have bursty delay mechanics, all of his stuff delays by 1 turn, but he does it a lot. So, like, if you want a consistent delay mechanic to complement somebody that already has delay in their kit, and as I've said numerous times, Quistis is a fantastic teammate for Garland because she has the speed down, which complements his chain of time aura. She has turn rate down, she has burst delay, and she batteries Garland in order for his EX to deal that much more damage. They are brilliant together, so if you really want to play around with that particular pairing, then Garland is actually quite a good choice for you. But if you wanted to save yourself to having to get the LD for when Garland's inevitable burst turns up, that's also a good reason to be pulling for it, because that way, when that banner comes up, Ultimisia is a good example of this. A lot of people are planning on pulling Ultimisia's LD when it comes later this month, because it means that they can ignore that banner and go to the second banner, because Penello's LD is on the same banner as Ultimisia's burst, and they'd rather pull for Penello than having to go for Ultimisia's full kit. Because that it saves you a step. If Garland's somebody that you know you want to burst for eventually, then maybe it might be a good idea to pull for it now. If you, like, the situations which I wouldn't pull for him is if you were waiting, like, for his burst and you were happy to pull for his full kit later, but we don't know what that banners are going to look like yet, so we don't know what that's going to be when it comes to JP, so we don't know what characters are going to come with him, so it's a kind of a risky move if you're a big fan of Garland to do that. If you're content with delay-based characters you've already had, then you don't need Garland, realistically. If, like, I mean, I say that Quistis is a great teammate for him, but she also is a great teammate for a lot of people. You know, she doesn't have to go with Garland to be really good. There's a lot of characters that work well with her, so if you didn't want to pull for Garland, you don't really have to. And if resource gathering is, like, more important for you, so there's characters that you're looking forward to in the near future, either you've seen them on one of my future pulls videos, or you've seen them in all across the internet, because we all know what's coming in JP for the large part. So if there's somebody that you're looking forward to, then Garland, while being very good and really brought up to speed with where he should be at this point in the game, he doesn't break the game. He's just really good. So if you're saving for somebody else that does, then you could probably skip this. And similarly, if you already have access to Warrior of Light, Squall and his full kit, and Sephiroth EX, then the Chaos Challenge can be done without Garland. It's not a major issue if you don't have him. If you've got everybody else, then you can finish this without him without an issue. So that's going to be it from me for today's video. I hope that this video gives you a little bit of guidance as to what Garland brings to the table, situations in which you would want to pull for him, situations in which maybe you would not, and also a little bit of detailing on the event itself so that you guys can get through it as painlessly as possible and get your revenge on that damn Colorless Queen that caused us so many issues all those months ago. So yes, as I say, don't forget to like the video, share it out, subscribe to the channel, and of course click that bell for notifications on any future videos on Dissidia or Opera Omnia that I might have for you, like, coming up in the near future. And obviously don't forget to come and check me out on Twitch. Like I said, this weekend I'll be playing FF9 and 14, and then on Monday I will be doing the Garland Lost chapter for myself, so hopefully I will see you guys there. If not, I shall see you in the next video. So thanks very much again, and take care everyone. Bye bye.